arigato, geek to me radio, da 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 da. Domo arigato, geek to me radio, da 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 da. Welcome, geeks and nerds, girls and boys, to a brand new episode of Geek to Me Radio. Tonight, we have novelist Alex Segura talking about his brand new book, Alter Ego. We'll chat with him about that. After that, my interview with Brad Meltzer, talking about his new book, The JFK Conspiracy, how you can meet Brad Meltzer here in St. Louis this Saturday. All that and more. Stand by. We're talking TV, comics and movies, and video games. And if you don't know Star Trek from Star Wars, we'll try to explain. There are 12 doctors for Hogwarts houses, one ring rules them all. To be the greatest Pokemon master, you must catch them all. You must catch them all. Try to catch them all. Gotta catch them all. Gotta catch them all. And if you're driving around the greater St. Louis area tonight listening to us on the Big 550 KTRS, hello to all of you out there listening. Thanks for tuning in on this nice, it felt like a blustery, warm type of day with the temperatures actually hitting 40 degrees here. Hopefully some of that snow is starting to melt where you are as well. If you are looking for the stream, no stream tonight. Joey V is under the weather. He's the one who runs all the video for YouTube and Facebook, so we are not doing video tonight, just back to good old-fashioned radio. So for those of you hearing us after the fact in the podcast form, on whatever platform you're choosing to stream podcasts, we do appreciate you finding us there and subscribing. Hopefully you've left us a nice 5-star review at this point. We're going to have to think of a contest for I'd like to get some more reviews up there, so I'm going to have to come up with a contest, something we can give away and put everyone who puts a review into a drawing for something. We'll see what that looks like as we get into the spring months here. We had a great time last night, so hello to all of you who were at the Clue event, where we had the 40th anniversary of the movie Clue. We celebrated Tenacious Eats. Chef Liz put on a great 6-course meal, it was paired with a different character of the movie in the order in which they arrived. She's always brilliant. She's a film studies major too. I'm not sure if you know that, but so she takes that film, she takes her incredible culinary skills, and along with her husband, Chef Steve, who came out with some fantastic desserts last night, and Raven and Jordan, who run Work and Leisure. If you guys came out to that event, you know how much fun it was. We had so many great people dressed up in costume. We had a costume contest, winners for the best Colonel Mustard, Mr. Green, Miss Peacock, Miss Scarlet, Miss White, and Professor Plum, and then the ancillary characters like Mrs. Ho, the singing telegram girl. We had the character who's the FBI agent at the end of the movie. We had some Wadsworths as well. So a great time was had by all. If you didn't get a chance to go, Work and Leisure is doing a Valentine's Day event. So make sure you check that out. Go to the Work and Leisure STL, find them there, and also follow them on Instagram as well as Tenacious Eats, and you can keep up with all the cool stuff. Plus, they've got the 20th anniversary of The Office, their big thing going on in March. So we're going to do a ticket giveaway for that. So stay tuned here. Keep it tuned in. We'll give you a pair of tickets. I think it's a pair of 4-pack. I'll have to check with Chef Liz and see what we're giving away for that. But that's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have the Office Olympics. We'll be playing some games. We'll have a Dwight Schrute lookalike contest as well. So a lot of fun stuff happening. So again, thanks again to Work and Leisure STL and to Tenacious Eats for having me along for the ride for that. It was a lot of fun last night. And hello to all of you new friends who may be tuning in for the first time after hearing about my little show at the Clue 40th anniversary event. That being said, we've got 2 great interviews for you. A lot of times, obviously, this is Sunday night. It's 10 o'clock Eastern. So some people, they're like, you know what? I really can't do it. Sunday nights are hard for me. And I've had that from guests in the past, obviously, who just can't do the Sunday night live show. So I pre-record with them, which is great because I still get these great interviews, and then they don't have to worry about setting this time schedule aside on a Sunday when it's a little rough for people. So we've got my interview first up, Alex Segura. He's been on the air with me before, and he's got a new book out called Alter Ego. So I was able to sit down and chat with him. Here is our conversation. We're joined once again by best-selling and award-winning author Alex Segura, this time with a new book, Alter Ego, that's out. We're going to talk to him about that and a few other things. Alex, I appreciate your time.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. It's been a while. I think last time I saw you was at Terrificon 2022?
Yeah, 2023. Yeah, that was a great show.
23, yeah. So you're making the rounds then, because we had you on for Arana and Spider-Man 2099, Dark Tomorrow, which I love that book.
Thank you.
Alter Ego is a sequel to your previous work, Secret Identity. Talk a little bit about doing a sequel to this.
So the language we're actually using is standalone sequel, because you can read Alter Ego on its own. It's a novel that exists in the world of Secret Identity. It has connective tissue to Secret Identity. But if you're coming in cold and haven't read Secret Identity and don't know anything about it, you can still pick up Alter Ego on its own. And it's the story of Annie Bustamante, who is a film director of some acclaim. She's almost won an Oscar. She's made a career as a director of movies. But once upon a time, she was a comic book artist and writer. And there's one character that pulled her into the world of comics as a kid, this obscure 1970s superhero that is long out of print called the legendary Lynx. And as Annie is back in her apartment in New York between projects, because her last film was shelved for tax reasons, she's kind of just creating a fan comic, really, of the Lynx, because as far as she knows, nobody owns the rights. It's kind of in limbo. So she's drawing and writing this fan comic just to pass the time, when she gets an email from this company called Triumph Entertainment. And Triumph claims to be connected to the Triumph comics of the 70s. And they say they own the rights to the Lynx. They're launching a, I guess, multi-platform campaign, movie, video game, you name it. And they want Annie to spearhead the comic that this is all going to be based on. So it's a huge opportunity for Annie to basically come back home and redefine this character that's meant so much to her. And so she starts working on the project, even though some red flags pop up. And as she starts, she's getting messages from a Signal account, which is a encrypted messaging app. And the user is called Apparition. And Annie knows that Apparition is the ghost-like mentor of the Lynx. So whoever's messaging her understands the lore as much as she does. And Apparition is basically telling Annie, be careful, you're in too deep, this is not a good situation, and you're putting yourself and your daughter at risk. And so as Annie continues to work on the project, she starts peeling back layer and layer of mystery and starts to realize that maybe these people that claim to own the character don't, and that maybe the truth about who created the Lynx isn't out there yet.
So it's a little bit of a thriller, a little bit of crime, it sounds like, involved in that.
Oh, for sure.
What inspired this particular type of novel from you?
Well, I've written, most of my novels are in the crime mystery genre,
Sure.
But I really wanted, Secret Identity is very much a slow burn noir. And I wanted this to be still a character piece. We spend a lot of time in Annie's head and in her background and learning her story, but I wanted it to feel much more like a Hitchcockian thriller, like page turner, plot twists, exciting, vibrant and fun read. But I wanted it to exist in the same world. I just didn't want it to feel like Secret Identity Part 2, even though they can be read together and they are part of the same, it's a duology, and you can read this and the comic. There's the Lynx comic book that Mad Cave put out. You can read it all together. You'll get a bigger picture, but it's also just in the same world, not episode 2.
One of the things that impresses me so much about you is you can go from doing like a crime, a spy, a novel, thriller like this, but then you're also writing Archie, or you're writing Star Wars comics as well. Yeah. And there's that's such a, is it coming from different parts of your brain? Do you always start stories in the same kind of vein, no matter who the character is? Talk a little bit about your process, if you could.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, for me, all story starts with character. Like, who's the character that I want to, focus on? Who's the person that is going to propel the narrative? And really, plot springs from that. And so if I'm doing my own stuff, obviously I have to build all the infrastructure and world. But if I'm coming in to Star Wars or the Spider-Verse or Archie or DC, what have you, it's really like, well, what's the character story? What's the conflict there? And when I put them into this infrastructure I've created, how do they respond? Like, I follow the characters around. And so I think broadly, every story is the same in terms of how I approach it. but the end result is different. And I'm such a consumer of different kinds of genres. Like, I love sci-fi, I love fantasy, I love mysteries, I love comics, even though comics are a medium, not a genre. But you get what I'm saying. I hop around. I'm pretty omnivoracious when it comes to stories. So I'm always interested in trying my hand at something different. And it keeps me interested, too.
Is that harder building worlds from scratch, like you said, and creating the infrastructure? Or is it harder to go into somebody else's sandbox where there's already established lore and characters and try to craft a story in that vein? Which is easier for you as a writer?
I think it's just different kind of work. I mean, when I'm doing work for hire or when I'm coming into an existing universe, a lot of the research time, I'm a fan, but I also want to get stuff right. So there's a level of research that goes into like Star Wars or the Spider-Verse or any established universe where I want to make sure that I'm getting it correct and someone's not going to read it and be pulled out of it because, oh, he got this character name wrong or this planet is wrong. But when it's my own lore that I'm creating, there's still that level of research and kind of mental space that has to be taken up to just build it out. You know what I mean? So I think it's equal amounts of work, but just different pathways to get there.
What inspires you when you are creating a brand new character? What kind of inspirations do you take from? Is it people you've met? Is it family figures who have influenced you? What kind of helped shape and mold your original characters?
I think it's really, this is going to sound a little new agey, but it's really like who pops into my mind. And I created this character called the Dusk, who's very much a Batman type figure, but as opposed to like punching and tossing people into jail, he has a more nuanced approach. And that just stemmed out of a conversation with my wife while we were talking about our son reading superhero comics, and she's a lawyer, and she said it would be great if there was a superhero that, kind of put a little more thought into it, as opposed to just throwing them in jail and kind of wiping their hands of the whole thing. Like, and that just, sometimes those germs of ideas become bigger projects. Sometimes they just become conversations you had and forgot. But I'm always kind of recording, like when I talk to people or read stuff or watch a movie. And I think most writers are like that. We have our antenna up. And when you catch something, you know pretty quickly if it's going to be a good idea or not.
With this particular story, Alter Ego, having this forgotten comic book character that's being brought back, given your experience in comics, if you could get the chance to write for a character who isn't maybe in the focus right now, who hasn't gotten a major Netflix series or HBO Max series, who would you like to bring back if you could?
I feel like I'm kind of doing it. I'm co-writing Dick Tracy for Mad Cave, which has been a huge honor. And I've been a fan of Dick Tracy since I was a little kid, and I felt he'd kind of laid fallow. There were other comics that were great, but I felt like there was a lot of space there to really give it that noir, hard-boiled treatment. So that's been a lot of fun, but I could think of so many. I love The Rocketeer. I'm writing a Green Hornet comic. I love the Green Hornet. I love those old pulp heroes. And even in bigger universes like Marvel or DC, there's so many characters that deserve more screen time. It's just a matter of getting the right story to fit them.
With Shallow Grave, obviously it was a collaborative effort, a couple of characters teaming up, two different writers. If you could do that with a superhero comic, let's say you're writing Dick Tracy now and they approach you, hey, we can team him up with, say it's maybe David Pepos' Space Ghost or something. What kind of collaboration would you like to see from someone like Dick Tracy or Green Hornet if you had your druthers?
Oh, that's a cool question. I think there's a lot of space for like Dick Tracy Batman. I think that could be really neat, or something a little more out of this world, like Dick Tracy Flash Gordon. I think all of those things could really be fun. And
I've got in my hands right now, I've been reading Star Wars comics ever since Marvel took over. I've just been devouring them. And the one you're currently writing, which takes place right after the events of Return of the Jedi, was that something was that an idea that you pitched to Marvel and the Star Wars editors? Say, hey, I've got this idea for what to do, or did they approach you?
I've been in the Star Wars kind of, I guess, ecosystem for a little bit. I wrote the Poe Dameron origin story novel for them a few years back. And so I did a one-shot that was tying into Return of the Jedi for Marvel. And I think I didn't know it at the time, but that felt a little bit like a test run in retrospect to see, if I could fit in there. And then they approached me and said, hey, we have this idea of doing a mega kind of a maxi series, 3 miniseries that are interconnecting that bridge the space between Return of the Jedi and the Battle of Jakku, which is obviously the end of the Galactic Civil War. That area has been explored, most notably in Chuck Wendig's Aftermath novels, but they really wanted to kind of show what the core characters like Luke and Leia and Han were doing in that time. And so that was a huge honor, obviously, but also a logistical kind of problem, like a logic problem. Like, like some stuff has been established. We've seen some clues about what happened, but also what were these characters doing and how does it play into the bigger Jakku story? So that's been a fun brain teaser, but also a huge responsibility. And so I'm treating it mentally like, what if there was another movie? Like, what if after Return of the Jedi, they said, well, this is the next story. Like, what feels epic enough to fill that space,
Yeah, and that's always a quandary people run into because the Star Wars has such a beloved fandom. They care about these characters so much. So the fact that, you've been entrusted with these, I know as a writer, I'm sure you take that very seriously.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I try to give grace and understanding to what people want in that space, but I also feel the responsibility of telling a compelling story that, it's you do the work and you hope everyone enjoys it. You're not going to please everybody, but you try to tell a fun story and honor these characters, but also know that by the end of it, they have to be here or there. There's like a much bigger tapestry that you have to recognize.
And circling back to Alter Ego, if, that Secret Identity, Alter Ego, so they don't have to necessarily read Secret Identity to understand Alter Ego. Are there plans already? Because I know some writers' brains work, 8 steps ahead. Are there plans for another entry in this, I don't want to call it a trilogy, but in this particular series?
No immediate plans for a third novel, though there is a graphic novel component in that, when you read Secret Identity and Alter Ego, there's interstitial sequences of the Lynx comic. You see the Lynx comic that Carmen created in Secret Identity. You see some pages, and then you also see the comic that Annie is creating in Alter Ego. So what we did is we took those pages from Secret Identity, which are in black and white. We expanded them. We added about 45 pages of content, or probably more than that. And Mad Cave collected and released the remastered reprint of the Lost Legendary Lynx comics.
Oh, wow.
And so that was, and we did it completely tongue-in-cheek. Like the amazing writer J.M. DeMatteis, who has written every major comic book character, including Kraven's Last Hunt, Batman, everybody, you name it. He wrote an intro to the trade that basically was in tongue-in-cheek and said, I read the Lynx comics as a young comic creator, and it was an inspiration to me in this way and that way. And so we treated it very much in world, and I think people got a kick out of it. And so you can read all those different elements, and I think it paints a full picture of the story. So to answer your question, I don't have an immediate, I do have ideas, but I don't have an immediate desire to continue it for now.
Gotcha. And when you're working on multiple projects like Alter Ego, and then you're doing Star Wars and you're doing other comics for DC and things like that, do you have a schedule? Like, I'm going to work Tuesdays, Thursdays on the novel, and then Fridays and Sundays I do Star Wars? Or do you is it kind of one of those things where you kind of encompass all of it and, I have an idea for this. You stop what you're doing and move on to that project for a little bit. What's your process there?
It's a good question. I see it as like 2 tracks. I have my comics track, and I tend to be more productive with comics during the day, like when I'm checking emails, and it just feels like a better fit to my brain at that time. And then at night, I kind of put my novel writing hat, and it's probably because the house is quiet. I have 2 young kids, and the house is quieter when they're asleep, and I can just and email is quieter, so I can kind of crank on prose at that time. But it's also a catch as catch can, like just work on whatever's on fire and go from there.
Yes, I feel very seen by that comment. So I totally get
exactly.
that. And my last question, I apologize, I didn't ask this the last time I had you on. With being a writer, I'm curious, when did you know that writing is my career path? Was it early on, or was it kind of something that you kind of said, hey, this is kind of what I want to do now, and diverged a little bit?
That's a good question. I mean, I always came up with stories, like as a kid reading Archie comics, I would come up with new characters that would interact with them. I wrote like a long form X-Men story where the original X-Men came back and battled the all different X-Men. Mind you, this was a time where Wikipedia didn't exist, and I had to kind of pull all my information from like Wizard Magazine and Marvel cards. Like,
right.
That's how I learned the lore. So I was always creating stories or thinking about possible stories, like writing. Like I remember there was a Saga of the Amazing Spider-Man comic that basically gave you a synopsis of every issue of Amazing Spider-Man. And so I wrote my own, like, what if there was this run and this is what would happen? And but I don't think it crystallized to me as like a profession until I was in college. And that's when I thought, well, this would be cool. And then the pragmatist in me was like, well, I'll become a journalist, and that can be like a way to get paid to write. But eventually I just kind of started pecking away at a novel, and here we are. So.
And Alter Ego available now. I know you're on a bit of a tour, Miami, New York. I think you're in Massachusetts now, and then back down to Miami, Florida for the rest of this tour. That's amazing. So if people are listening right now, obviously we always encourage you, please go to your local bookshop. If they don't have it, they can order it. So just ask them. But otherwise, is there an audio version or an ebook available as well?
Yes, it's on all platforms. You can find it wherever you get books. There's a fantastic audio version that Frankie Corzo narrated and did an amazing job on the main story, but also the comic book sequences. She's just kind of hit a home run. I'm an avid audiobook listener, and I was really blown away by what she did. But yeah, wherever books are sold, your indie bookstore obviously is the best bet. But it's also online or wherever you buy your books. And a
gorgeous website, alexsegura.com. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. If you're hearing this after the fact in the podcast form, scroll down there, and we'll have a link to that. If people want to find out more about you, is the website the best place to send them? Are you very active on social medias?
You can find, my website's got all the info, but I'm also on Instagram. I have a pretty active Substack, alexsegura.substack.com, a newsletter. And I'm also on Blue Sky and Threads.
Perfect. Alex Segura, it's always great to talk to you. Very successful book tour for you, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much. Great to chat.
Thank you.
There he goes. Like I said, if you get a chance to pick that one up, Alter Ego, it's in stores and available online now. Please go to your local store, your bookstore, or this. Alex has, the comic books he's done too. Check with your local comic book store. They can probably order it for you, and you can pick it up there with your weekly pulls. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to come right back in just a moment. We got some stuff to tell you about. And, of course, my interview with New York Times bestselling author Brad Meltzer. Stick around. You're listening to Geek to Me Radio on the Big 550 KTRS.
Hi, I'm Jim Pinnock, and you're listening to Geek to Me Radio. Get in touch with your inner geek.
Back. Geek to Me Radio, heard here every Sunday night on the Big 550 KTRS. I'm your host, James Enstall. I want to make sure we tell you about Bugs Comics and Games. We were just talking with Alex Segura about the Star Wars comics he's got, and I went by and they've got some of the new Star Wars comics right there on the shelf as they kind of come out of the basically Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, and now Marvel Comics is kind of covering some of the stuff that happened after the events of Return of the Jedi with the Battle of Jakku series. So it's this great comic book, brand new from Marvel. Alex Segura is writing that. You can pick that up at Bugs Comics and Games. Lots of good comics. I just started, and Larry, if you're listening to this, of course, Larry's laughing because I pick up comics, and I've got a short box full of, I'm using air quotes, you can't see me because there's no video tonight, new comics that I buy every week, and I just put them aside because I usually like to bank them. So I'll get 3 or 4 issues in before I start it. And I know Larry's asked me several times, have you started reading Ultimate Spider-Man yet? Not yet. Well, the 12th issue came out, so I figured, you know what, I'll start reading it. It is so good. I think this is Hickman is writing this one. So if you're a Spider-Man fan at all, let me recommend Ultimate Spider-Man out now. Larry's got copies of those on the shelves as well. New comics, back issues, toys, games, whatever it is you're looking for. My brand new friend, Tony Viviana, who I just met last night. I know he's a comic book fan, come to find out. Tony, if you're listening, go check out Bugs Comics and Games. Anyone who's in the greater St. Louis area should, and he's on Bryan Road in O'Fallon, Missouri. I've been going to see Larry since before I had my driver's license. I used to have to ride my bike. I'm a North County boy. It's up in Florissant. He was had a store he opened up there on, it was West Florissant Road. And I would ride my bike all the way from Hazelwood Central, basically, up to West Florissant, even in the snow sometimes, like snow like we just got this past weekend. I would still get on my bike because I had to have my comic books. And I'm thrilled that Larry's opened a brand new store. He's selling comics again. He's right there on Bryan Road in O'Fallon. If you're not in the greater St. Louis, St. Charles area, don't worry. Check him out on Facebook, Bugs Comics and Games, A-N-D Games on Facebook. Give his Instagram page a like. I helped him put some games up there. If you're a fan of role-playing games, we put some role-playing games up there. You'll see stuff on his Instagram page, and if it's something you like, send him an email. Say, hey, I would like to get that. He'll send you an invoice, and then once you pay the invoice, he ships the game or the toy or the card or the comic, whatever it is, right to you. And I know a lot of places have lost their local comic book stores lately. A lot of places closed during the pandemic. It didn't open up. So let Bugs Comics and Games be your new local comic book store. Check them out, Bugs Comics and Games. Very proud to have them as the official comic book sponsor here on Geek to Me Radio. I have another interview for you. Brad Meltzer is an incredible author, and there's no limit to what he does. He does children's books. Last time I had him on, 2 times ago, he was on with Susan Eisenberg, my dear friend and the voice of Wonder Woman in Justice League, talking about his I Am book series he does with Chris Eliopoulos. I Am Sally Ride is coming out next month, I believe, but he's had some great ones. I Am Stephen Hawking. He did a superhero series. Of course he did. I Am Wonder Woman. Susan and I talked with him about that. I Am Batman. In addition, he does these amazing novels and thrillers like the Zig and Nola series. The Lightning Rod had just come out the very first time I talked to them. He wrote Identity Crisis for DC Comics. He's got these political thrillers as well. He's a historian. There's just no limit to the guy's talent, so I'm very, very pleased to say he's going to be back in St. Louis. I can't remember which branch of the library, the St. Louis Library he'll be at, but he will be here on Saturday, this coming Saturday, the 18th at 7 p.m. He'll be discussing his brand new book, The JFK Conspiracy. But for those of you who can't make it to the library event, have no fear because I was able to have a little chat with him earlier this week.
Very pleased to welcome back to the show once again, Brad Meltzer, New York Times bestselling author, award-winning writer, and so much more. We'd spend half the interview just doing the intros. But Brad, thanks for coming on again.
No, great to be back, my friend. I appreciate that.
Of course. As soon as I saw you were coming back here through St. Louis on a book tour, I was like, well, I have to reach out. But you've got a lot of cities you're hitting. You're going to Long Island, Baltimore, Fairfax, Atlanta, Dallas, and our very own humble little hamlet here, St. Louis.
And Florida, don't forget. We gotta, if I don't go to my home state, my family, who are they going to make fun of?
Exactly. This tour, I mean, the JFK Conspiracy, I love this because everyone thinks of, everyone knows Lee Harvey Oswald and the actual plot that was carried out. I was not even that familiar with this one. So it was so fascinating. Talk a little bit about how the genesis of doing this particular idea came about for you.
Listen, first of all, it's just the story's so wild. We, as you said, we know the Lee Harvey Oswald story, but people don't realize there was another secret plot to kill JFK at the start of his presidency. It's 1960, and the assassin basically has a car that he's filled with 7 sticks of dynamite. And he follows JFK to his home in Palm Beach, Florida, because he thinks that JFK's security is smaller there, which he's right about. And he knows JFK goes to a church service at 10 a.m. every Sunday morning. So he just waits outside JFK's house, and JFK's right on time. And all this assassin has to do is hit the gas pedal and then push the little trigger mechanism he's made, and boom will go the dynamite. And what saves JFK's life that day, I won't ruin it for you, but is one of the craziest JFK stories you've never heard in your life. And we were like, we have to tell this story.
It's fascinating because I think we're all about conspiracy, and we love, especially when it comes to presidential and political intrigue and the marrying of this two. Obviously, the stuff around the Lincoln assassination and obviously JF Kennedy. I'm curious, as your thoughts as a historian and an author, stuff like this to us happened in the past. We weren't around back then. Do you think that there is nostalgia is the wrong word, but when we look at stuff that you and I were alive during the attempted Reagan assassination, obviously the recent Donald Trump assassination attempts, not to make it political, but what is it about presidential assassinations that seem to just fascinate and resonate so hard with the zeitgeist?
Well, listen, first of all, the fact that 4 presidents have died over all these years in our country's history, they stand out. You blow someone's brains apart, people tend to notice. It's a memorable story. But you're asking the right question, which is, why does it matter though now? This happened 60 years ago. And the reason it matters, I know it's titillating for me to come on and say, hey, we found a secret plot to kill JFK you didn't know about. But the reason we tell this story is because if you look actually at the history in 1960, it's one of the most bitterly fought presidential elections between Kennedy and Richard Nixon. Whatever side you're on, it's so bitterly fought that it's the closest election at that point and still in the 20th century. The country is so bitterly divided that whatever side you're on, you hate the other side. You think they're complete, utter morons. Does that sound familiar to you?
A little bit.
Right? And so these stories, history is not important because it's a cool old story. It's only, to me, interesting if it tells us something about where we are today. And you can study the time period and see all the venom and hatred that was being directed at JFK because he was Catholic, because he was an immigrant. And when you start bad-mouthing people like that, you can't be surprised when someone gets activated. And that's what happens here. One of these guys gets activated and is like, yeah, man, this guy's bad. I'm going to take care of him.
How long ago did you guys start? Because obviously recent events make this book even more timely, it seems like. But obviously you guys didn't start writing this as recently as, the 2024 election cycle. How long ago did you both start on this?
I know it really is. I mean, when we were researching and writing the book, and then obviously Trump has had 2 assassination attempts on him when he was running for the presidency just recently. I mean, it felt like, it was one of those moments where you look over your shoulder as you're writing and you're like, is anyone watching and knowing what we're writing about? It was just crazy. But again, you have to understand what was happening back then is there were, Reverend Norman Vincent Peale, famous guy who wrote The Power of Positive Thinking back then, and also Reverend Billy Graham led a group of religious leaders, Protestant leaders, who basically were like, we don't want this Catholic to win. It almost sounds trite to say it now. Like, why would they hate each other so much? But back then, they thought a Catholic president is not going to be loyal to these United States, is going to be loyal only to his Pope. He's going to answer to the Pope and not to us. And we got to do everything we can to make sure this Catholic doesn't win. And they put all their power against it. At the same time, a completely different kind of group is doing the same thing called the KKK. And we all know the Ku Klux Klan, of course, from the Civil War and targeting the black community. But in the 1920s, the KKK had a resurgence. And they realized they can get more membership, more dues by hating even more people. So instead of course, the black community, they widened their circle to hate the Jewish community and, of course, the immigrant community. And these guys were, when you say this immigrant, this Catholic, they saw JFK as an Irish Catholic immigrant. He's taken over this country. He's going to make this country a bad place. We got to do something about it. Guess what? Someone was listening. And Richard Pavlik, this disgruntled postal worker, already was a pretty hateful guy, and it clearly had a couple screws loose, but he's listening, and he's like, yeah, we really do have to do something about it.
With this particular book, I'm curious also kind of to dip back into my other question, stuff a little more recent that's happened in your and my lifetime, like the Reagan assassination. Is there any chance, like when you look at stuff, I'm not sure exactly how to phrase this question. Is the current stuff that's happened in our lifetime, we have obviously more information about stuff that just happened 40, 45 years ago than we do 50, 60 years ago. Is stuff like the Reagan assassination attempt, and do you think in 20 years you might be writing a book about Trump's assassination attempt, or is there something specific about this kind of pre-1980s timeline that just kind of has more minerals to mine, more information undiscovered? Is there any kind of aspect to that? Does that make sense as a question?
Yeah, no, it does, of course. I mean, listen, what's fascinating to me is when you're looking at something new. I mean, if you want to read about what killed Kennedy in the end, there are great books written on it, and we make no mistake. We talk about Lee Harvey Oswald's attack. We show you it at the end of the JFK conspiracy. We show you through the eyes of Jackie Kennedy and her amazing Secret Service agent. It's a view you've never seen. It's a wild view. But what I love is to show people what they have never seen before. This is the first book ever written about the plot by Richard Pavlik to kill JFK at the start of his presidency. The one that we wrote about the Nazi conspiracy, about the secret plot to kill FDR, Stalin, and Churchill, was also this unexamined, relatively unexamined plot that had been written about back in the 40s and 50s, but just really no one had taken a new eye to it with better, and more clear research. And so, to me, if there's something new to say that no one knows, then I'll look at anything. But I just, to me, the fun of it, so to speak, fun is a weird word with an assassination attempt,
Right.
but the fun of it, the fun of historical research to me is showing people what none of us, including myself, have ever seen. And that's when I get interested.
So how do you come across stories like this? Because as I said, I'm not considered history is not my main focus, but I've know enough about history that I never even heard of this. Is it stuff you come across while you're doing research for other things? You kind of put a little pin in it, like we need to revisit this, or how do you come across these unknown threads that you're able to just kind of tug on and really dig into?
Yeah, the first one I ever did, I found the secret plot to kill George Washington at the start of the Revolutionary War. And what happened was when George Washington found out about it, he gathered up those that were responsible. He built a gallows and he hanged the man who he thought was responsible in front of 20,000 people, the largest execution at that point in North American history. And I remember reading that in like a footnote. And I'm just I'm a lunatic kind of history reader, so of course I love the footnotes. And I read that and I was like, that's just crazy. And I wound up using it in one of my thrillers. It was like a paragraph in one of my thrillers. I turned that footnote into a paragraph. But like 2 years went by, maybe 3, 4, 5 years went by. I still kept thinking about that story. And I'd find myself, with my free time, Googling that story. And that's when I realized, like, when you're thinking about something for over a number of years, that's when you got to turn it into a book. And I just started, Josh mentioned I teamed up. And I was like, hey, listen, I really want to look into this. Let's see what we can find. And that's how they all start. It's me finding this thing that I just can't shake after a couple of years. And the list is long. And I love, when I have the time to go, I'd love to do, we're going to do another one after this and another one after that.
Without giving anything away, are they more historically set or are they more contemporary? Because obviously, it's been a good 20-year span between the plot to kill Roosevelt and Stalin and Churchill and then into the JFK thing. Are you coming more forward in time or does this one go backwards? Can you give any hints at all?
Yeah, the funny part is that it's not a plan. It's not like we're going to go forward in time and then we're going to veer around. Like, we just say, what's the best story? Yeah. Whatever the best story is that we find, that's what we tell. So I have no problem if we went back and no problem if we go forward. It doesn't matter to me. Like, the fun of it is again, finding the unexplored.
I've got, I think I told you last time, I'm almost starting a Brad Meltzer bookshelf in my office here with all the items you've written between your great I Am books with Christopher Eliopoulos, and then you've got the Lightning Rod, which my wife devoured, and she keeps, ask Brad when he's writing the next one. So you've got all these different.
I'll tell you about that. That I can tell you. So I'll tell you. So the next one that comes out next month. We actually come out with the I Am Sally Ride book. So we just did Jesse Owens and Stephen Hawking. Now we're doing Sally Ride. After that, we do our first ever in the I Am series. We do our first We book. We Are the Beatles.
Oh, wow.
So that's what comes out after that. And then we're doing the other book that's going to come out in March. Is I gave the commencement address at the University of Michigan last year. When my son graduated Michigan, I went to Michigan and I got to give his own commencement address. And the book just got the speech got so well received and it just started spreading on the internet. And all these people started texting me saying, can I get a copy of that speech? I want a copy of that speech. I want to save the copy of the speech. And so we turned it into a book.
Oh, nice.
And so it's called Make Magic, the little book of inspiration you didn't know you needed. And Make Magic will come out in March. So we do the JFK Conspiracy now. I Am Sally Ride in February. Make Magic in March. 3 books in 3 months. And then, my friend, I need a nap.
Are you touring for all these other books, or is this kind of covering the JFK Conspiracy and a little bit of the other one coming out in February as well?
Yeah, no, I can't tour for all his books. I got to be a good dad. And so I'm just touring for JFK. And then the other ones, we'll talk about them on this tour. And then hopefully people will remember.
Yeah, and with the Michigan, I thought you were going to say you're doing an I Am Wolverine book for Marvel. You got the license, and it ties in with the Michigan Wolverines.
I know. Wolverines are good to kill a lot of things with one stone there.
Right.
Although we did do I Am as you know, we did I Am Superman and I Am Batman and I Am Wonder Woman. I love, and with our friend Susan Eisenberg, I love doing those books. They were great.
That was one of my favorite shows, is having both you and her on at the same time to discuss that book. It was so much fun.
She's the best.
I was curious, being a comic book fan, if I just want to ask your opinion, the new Superman teaser trailers dropped. It's gotten an astonishing amount of views racked up. How many of those millions of views were you watching it multiple times?
I mean, absolutely. One with each eyeball. I've definitely contributed to that. I love that trailer. And like everyone else, just cannot wait to see it all come together. Because, listen, we all know we're starving for hope as a culture right now.
Yeah.
We're starving for some kindness and decency. That's what Make Magic as a speech was about, was about the power of kindness and decency, that cruelty and venom aren't signs of strength, they're signs of weakness and petty insecurity. And what really takes strength is being kind to another person and showing them some empathy. And so for me, Superman couldn't come at a better time.
Words are your business. Were you surprised that your commencement speech or the speech at Michigan went so well and just went viral like that? Were you at all surprised?
Of course I was. I mean, I think as a parent, the best moments for me as a dad are not the moments I plan. All the moments I plan wind up falling to pieces. I'll plan this great trip and everyone will be like, that was boring. I'll plan this great, but the best moments are the ones you don't plan and they just totally shock you. And I wrote this speech just for my son. There are 70,000 people in that stadium. Like, that's what U2 played for when they, play Wembley Stadium for Live Aid.
Yeah.
And I wrote it for one kid, my kid who was a graduate that year. And all of a sudden, all these people were like, send me that, send me that, send me that. All these publishers started saying, we want to do a book of it. I was like, what are you talking about? That's not for publication. But it clearly was, because people said, I want to see that. I want to hold it. I want to gift it to someone to say thank you. So again, it completely shocked me.
Yeah, and like I said, words are your business. I was not terribly surprised because I saw the speech and I got emotional. I got to say, I got a little teared up and my eye parts got damp. It was really well done. Congratulations on that.
I appreciate it. And we obviously turned it into, something that you could gift to anyone of any age. So we took out the Michigan parts of it and turned it just into the part about making magic and what it takes to make magic in the world today.
And as I mentioned with Superman, I know you're a comic book guy. You had an award-winning run with Identity Crisis and the stuff you did with DC Comics and Green Arrow and everything like that. I'm curious, dipping over for a moment to Marvel versus, or I should say Deadpool and Wolverine, the Marvel Universe. Did you get to see that one? What were your thoughts on it? How did you enjoy it?
Oh, I loved it. Yeah, no, in fact, I went to see it with all the Marvel comic staff. My friends at Marvel let me into the screening, and so I came in to the city that day just to see it with them. And I got to sit with my wife and Chris Eliopoulos and his sons, and we all sat there together and got to geek out. And it was so fun when you get to watch it with the Marvel staff, like, it was so much more fun. Because those scenes when Wolverine's on the cross from the famous X-Men cover, or those, like, these are the people who worked on those books. Yeah. There's not a reference in that theater that wasn't caught. So like, someone sent me after like some video that said, hey, Brad, here's all the Easter eggs you might've missed. I'm like, who do you think you're sending this to? There are no Easter eggs we missed. There are none. Like, anything that we missed, someone was right next to you calling it out. Like, we got them. This is the nerdiest, best group on the planet. These are the people I want to see with. So it was just such a great screening, because when those moments came, no one was missing them. They were howling in the theater. People were screaming.
Yeah, it was so well done. I loved all the call outs. It was incredibly, incredibly well done film. What else has been, just before I let you go here, what else are you consuming? What shows are you watching? What kind of stuff has interested you and piqued you? Star Wars shows, just regular stuff on Apple TV, anything that you're consuming that you recommend?
Yeah, no, listen, what have I been enjoying? We've gone a little backwards. We're in the middle of The Americans right now. I missed The Americans, so we went backwards for that. We did just watch, I love Creature Commandos. I can't wait to watch the last episode. I haven't watched the last episode yet. What else am I enjoying? The truth is, there's lots of good stuff. I've been watching good movies too. My Old Ass was a great movie. That was just fun to like.
Aubrey
that
Plaza.
Was a fun movie. I just like seeing something that has something new. And I remember when we saw Everything Everywhere All at Once, I said to my kids, for all the stuff that everyone puts out regurgitating old intellectual properties, nothing will ever stop someone who has an original idea.
Yeah.
And I love when I got to see that, because it just felt like a breath of fresh air. And so that's what I love to consume, when you see something brand new like that. I just saw The Wild Robot, which I loved. Mm-hmm. and I missed it when it was in the theater, and I watched it with my sons, and we just all flipped for it.
Yeah, I mean, we're like I always say, we're getting a fire hose of content out there. It's hard to consume it all, but if you're a Star Wars fan at all, I'd recommend Skeleton Crew as well. It's a lot of fun.
Sorry, I did. I really enjoyed Skeleton. I just watched the first 2 episodes, but I have to remind me. I got to go back to that. That was really fun.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff. And I'm curious. My very last question. One of the ones that I just watched was a documentary. It's a couple years old now. With Stellan Skarsgård. It was about the Chernobyl, what happened around that. Was a dramatization.
Oh, I'm dying to see that. That's the guy who did The Last of Us. I'm dying to watch that show.
So good. I'm just curious, have you thought about doing a book about that whole surrounding the stuff about Chernobyl at all?
I haven't thought about that one, but I guess maybe after I watch a show I will. I'll tell you that.
No matter what you write, it's always fantastic to read. If you're listening right now, the JFK Conspiracy out in stores now. Make sure you go to your local bookstore and order it. If you can possibly do it, they'll order it for you, obviously. And it's always a pleasure to have you on. Make sure if you don't have anything going, if you're listening to this right now, Brad's going to be at the St. Louis Library here on Saturday, January 18th, 7 p.m. Tickets are available online at the St. Louis County website. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. Brad Meltzer, I always appreciate your time. It's always fantastic to talk to you. Safe travels.
Thank you, my friend. And anyone who wants to come to the St. Louis Library, again, you can bring your comics. You can bring anything else. I've signed it all.
Yeah, as I can attest to, I've had several posters signed by him at these different events. So thanks so much, Brad.
Thanks so much. Take care.
You too.
There he goes, Brad Meltzer. Make sure you check out that event. It's always fun to see him. He delivers a great show because you come out and he reads part of the thing, takes Q&As as to why the stuff he's talking about matters, and then at the end of it, he signs stuff for you. And I got a couple Identity Crisis posters signed, some of my comics that I brought along that he did with Green Arrow. So if you get a chance to go to that event at 7 o'clock this coming Saturday, check the St. Louis City, I believe it's St. Louis City or St. Louis County Library website, and they'll be able to tell you which branch. We're going to take our last commercial break. Come right back in just a moment, so stick around. We got a little bit of housekeeping to do here at the end. I want to tell you about our next week's show as well. You're listening to Geek to Me Radio on the Big 550 KTRS. Please stand by.
This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman. You're listening to Geek to Me Radio.
Welcome back to the show as we wrap it up here this Sunday night in the Big 550 KTRS studios. Again, best wishes. Hopefully Joey V is feeling better. He should be back with us next week. Hopefully he's doing well. So again, apologies for the no video. I am not technically savvy. I leave that to him, and he always makes the show look really well. He always also helps us out with the Justice League podcast, which if you haven't heard that yet, Justice League Revisited, my good friend Susan Eisenberg, the voice of Wonder Woman in that series. We've got a great series that we go on where we talk about the Justice League episodes in the order in which they were aired. We always have a great guest like Dan Reba or Phil Lamar or Jennifer Hale or Maria Canals-Barrera or Stan Berkowitz joins us, and we get to talk about Justice League, how these episodes were made, and it's a lot of fun. So check that out, Justice League Revisited, wherever you get your podcast from. We'll make sure we tell you about our premier sponsor, the Greater St. Charles Convention and Visitors Bureau. The website, discoverstcharles.com. Always something cool going on over there. My friend BJ is in town visiting from LA, and his home luckily escaped the fires. My heart breaks for all the people who lost everything in these fires. It's just awful to witness. And my thoughts and feelings go out to every single one of them. It's just, I can't imagine the loss, and I'm heartbroken for watching these fires as they happen. But he was in town visiting, and I said, where should we go to meet? He suggests the Bike Stop Cafe because he knows I love St. Charles. The entire downtown area is beautiful. The cobblestone streets. There's something magical about it when it snows, too. I know the people at the CBB put up video of when that snowfall hit, and it just looks like you're stepping back in time to a Hallmark movie. The smoke's kind of coming out of some of those chimneys on the old brick buildings, and the snow's coming down the cobblestones, and it's gorgeous. They have their ice sculpting event coming up. I believe it's next week. You can check out the website, discoverstcharles.com, to find out when and where all these cool things are happening. If you want to go out and try someplace new, a new restaurant, maybe you made it your New Year's resolution for 2025. Hey, I want to get out and try some of the new restaurants in this area because, my goodness, we've got some great food in this greater St. Louis, St. Charles area in which we live. A lot of good restaurants up and down North and South Main Street, from Novellas to Salt and Smoke to Magpies and beyond. Whatever taste you might have, you can probably scratch that little itch of your taste bud with one of these nice restaurants up and down North and South Main Street in beautiful downtown St. Charles. Always a good time to be had. These are all small shops, small restaurants, small businesses, and so it's very important to support those places in these economic times in which we find ourselves. So check them out, whether you're outside the greater St. Louis, St. Charles area, or whether you're right here and just haven't been across the bridge in a while. Start your trip at the website discoverstcharles.com. That's discoverstcharles.com. As we always say, it's an historically good time. That's going to wrap it up. Make sure you check out the #2 Rivers Comic Con, our Comic Con coming to historic St. Charles, which is happening in Memorial Day weekend of this year. So make sure you get your tickets early because they're going to be going up in price here starting, I believe, Valentine's Day. So get them now. The #2 riverscomiccon.com. Check out the guest list. Roy Thomas, Chuck Patton, Phil Lamar, Susan Eisenberg, Keith Williams, Andy Parks, Phil Hester. A lot of great talent coming that we're bringing to you. And I'm one of the co-creators of this, so you'd be doing me a favor. Check out the website and buy your tickets early. Get them in advance so you don't have to worry about the increase in prices coming soon. Thank you, as always, to Brad Meltzer and Alex Segura. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me about those projects. Check out Alter Ego and the other book, The JFK Conspiracy, in stores now. Until next week, my friends.
That's a show.